The Powkiddy V90, the retro handheld that my friend gifted me that got me into this whole community when I started making videos about it. It had its time, but it's not very powerful, so now we have a whole bunch of options to choose from. But the question becomes, which one should you choose and why? And the video title is not some type of clickbait. I'm in a real situation right now where I have to choose one. Because I'm going on a trip next weekend to multiple countries, and I'm only bringing a little backpack like this with me, so I can really only choose one little retro handheld. But the purpose of this video is to help you make a choice, and I'd actually love to know which one you like the most, so let me know down in the comments why you made that choice. So just a quick size comparison of all of them. You can see the two on the left are bigger than the two on the right. This is Anbernic's RG35XX SP that came out in 2024. This is Powkiddy's new V90S. This is the Miyoo Flip that came out right at the end of 2024, early 2025. And this is Anbernic's new smaller RG34XX SP. So the two on the left are the same size and the two on the right are the same size. The three of these have the same screen size at 3.5 inches with a 4:3 ratio, which will cover a lot of your systems. But the RG34XX SP is called that because it has a 3.4 inch screen with a 3:2 ratio specifically for Game Boy Advance. And I'll let you know that Mech DIY sent me these devices for review, and if you want to save 16% on their website, use my discount code BATPIXEL. So let's start with the new Powkiddy V90S. When I first held this in my hands, I was like, wow, it has extremely high quality, it feels really nice, the hinge is amazing. It basically only has one setting for the hinge, just here and closed. You can open it up so it's 90 degrees. It can't go straight like that because it'll just pop back in place. You can close it up to about here and then it'll start to snap closed. The thing about these two handhelds being larger is that they're a lot more comfortable to hold for adults compared to the smaller flips. The buttons are rubber membranes, they're very squishy, they're not very loud at all, but the menu button and the start and select buttons are very clicky. The bumpers on the back are very clicky as well. So if you're just playing games with the D-pad and these four face buttons, then it will be very quiet. I still have the original 35XX SP and the buttons were very clicky on those, but they have updated them so that the buttons are quieter, but don't expect them to be super quiet. They will still make a bit of noise. You'll notice that it has the double hinge, which is very high quality. The speaker's down here so it won't get in your way while you're playing. There's nothing on the bottom. On your right, you have your SD card slot, power reset. On your left, you've got your volume buttons and your expansion SD card slot. On the back you've got your charge port and your OTG port for externals. One thing I've always liked about Powkiddy is you can unscrew this and take the battery out and switch it out with a new one, so you can take multiple batteries with you when you travel, or if anything goes wrong with the battery, it's easily swappable. Now as far as the performance goes with the Powkiddy, it'll play everything up to PlayStation 1, and then when you play N64, PSP, Dreamcast, it will struggle a little bit on some games, and that's the same with all the handhelds I'm looking at in this video. They're all around the same performance, so you don't really have to worry about those kind of differences with these handhelds. But the awesome thing about the games on the Powkiddy V90S is when I first turned this on, I thought ArcOS was installed right out of the gate, but it's some kind of version of Batocera. It says Batocera Linux Dev Mod 2025 May 16th. So it comes with a bunch of options. A lot of the emulators are set up, everything's scraped, and everything performs really well. So you have a very good custom firmware on the Powkiddy straight away, and it's good to go. You don't have to set anything up. You don't have to go messing around with an SD card. You can just play all your games, and you don't have to worry about connecting to retro achievements or Wi-Fi. No Bluetooth or anything like that. It's just the handheld. Very simple. Cheap price, very, very high quality. But something that does suck about the firmware on here is that it's not designed for flip handhelds. So just check this out. If I close this up and just wait a second, if I slowly open this, you can see that the game's still on in there. This doesn't shut off when you close it, so it doesn't have a sleep mode. You basically just have to set that up in your settings. So if I go into device settings and power management, I can say, my display will go off after 3 minutes, and then the device will shut down after 10 minutes if I'm not using it. But if you want to just put this to sleep right away, just remember to hit the power button as you do with all the other handhelds, and then you can just close it up. So that's kind of odd. Regarding price, this is the cheapest handheld between all of these at around $50 and is brand new. Now you can can find an RG35XX SP for around the same price, depending on where you look and if it's on sale. But the only thing about that is this does not have Wi-Fi, Bluetooth, and you'll notice that on the back, the RG35XX SP has HDMI out. This does not. Anbernic has a headphone jack with this. This does not. So yeah, the great thing about this is its simplicity. It's offline. If you want to use external controllers, there's no Bluetooth or Wi-Fi or anything, so you'd have to use this OTG port. So if you like simplicity without any of the bells and whistles, you just want to play some games, use your save states locally on this device, this is for you. If you're someone that likes to have really good features with their handheld, you like Wi-Fi, Bluetooth, HDMI out, and a headphone jack, you might be better off going with Anbernic's RG35XX SP. Because this has all those features, I'm running Miyoo OS on this right now, so it has lots of custom firmware options as well. So you can do things like play retro game co-op mode online through RetroArch, you can back up your saves through the cloud, you can use Bluetooth controllers, a bunch of Wi-Fi features and apps. The only disadvantage about buying this is if you just buy one with the stock SD card, the stock OS is really not that great on these, so you will most likely have to buy an SD card and set up a custom firmware yourself. So this option will just naturally cost you a little bit more money to get more features. And I love this thing. Last summer I was playing this around my fire pit all the time, or if I'm just hanging out on my porch swing, and it's just such a solid, high quality handheld. You really can't go wrong with this, especially where it has so many features above the Powkiddy. The only thing about these is that you don't have any sticks. You only have this D-pad, and if you want to set up N64 games for your C buttons, you're going to have to use like weird button combinations and stuff like that. And your joystick games are not going to feel that great using a D-pad. So that's kind of one disadvantage with these, is you'll most likely be sticking to like older games like Sega Genesis. And this joystick area on the Powkiddy V90S is just filled up with this shiny plastic. It leaves fingerprints and little smudges and stuff like that. And I find that when I'm playing, I just kind of like OCD am wiping this all the time. So this is just kind of like an odd design to me. I think this area here just should have been this texture plastic. So you can see a smaller handheld like the Miyoo Flip, for example, utilizes this space down here a lot better and gives you a couple of joysticks to play with. So that's just something to keep in mind with these larger two, is you are just limited to these buttons up here. And I made a quick summary of some advantages and disadvantages of these two handhelds that I just showed you guys, just so you can just see it a little bit easier. Now let's move on to Anbernic's new RG34XX SP. The only real big differences being this has joysticks, and they shrunk the plastic down on the screen here so that they're only utilizing this space here, which is a Game Boy Advance ratio. You'll notice that they're pretty much the same size this way, but if you turn them this way, obviously this one's going to be a bit smaller. The 34XX SP is basically the exact same size as the new Miyoo Flip. Now the Flip has the same 3.5 inch screen with the 4:3 ratio as the RG35XX SP. Same thing with the Powkiddy V90S, and yeah, because of that, this is specifically designed for Game Boy Advance, so that means all your other emulators will not have a good screen size for it, and they'll be squat down a bit. But the quality of this one is way better than the Miyoo Flip. It has the same hinge design as the 35XX SP, where it has that open mode, but you can hold this one open straight. You can put it at a 90-degree angle, and down here somewhere it will shut closed. And it's kind of funny because I can't keep these Anbernic devices closed flush because they do have magnets in here, so they're pushing each other away. So it keeps the lid closed really strong, although you can see through it. There is like a little bit of space, so dust and stuff will still get in here. The Miyoo Flip closes up the best and you can't see through it at all. I can see through the front of the 35XX SP. The Powkiddy closes up tight on the front, but as you go back, it rises up a little bit and you can see through it. But yeah, compared to the Miyoo Flip, which is a very low quality, cheap feeling handheld with a very clicky, cheap hinge which breaks in here all the time on people, this basically has the same body, just a much more higher quality. Another thing to note is that they do have the smaller size D-pads. I don't really mind them. Like, I notice when I'm playing my Flip all the time, I just play. I don't really notice the D-pad at all, even though it's a bit smaller. These joysticks are not in the most comfortable location, but there's nowhere else to really put them, and they are a lot better for playing N64 and stuff because you can use this joystick for your C buttons, and when you're playing Dreamcast, you can just play it as you normally would, and it just feels a lot nicer. The buttons on this one are slightly clickier than the Flip. The Flip buttons are just very quiet, so they will make a little bit of a clicky noise if you're near somebody. But yeah, I gotta say, if they had just put this 3.5-inch screen with a 4:3 ratio in this handheld, this one would have been way better than the Miyoo Flip for me. I would have chose this as the replacement for the Flip. Never played a Flip again because the hinge is a lot better. It's a lot higher quality than this one. Why would they focus on just one emulator when it plays all kinds of different ones and has joysticks? It's just such a bizarre choice. They should have at least released this kind of handheld with a bigger screen first and then released a smaller screen for people who want Game Boy Advance handhelds. Maybe without the joysticks because it doesn't need that. Yeah, it's unfortunate, but hopefully they make a different version soon. So this should give you guys a rough idea of what it's like using this smaller screen size on a system like Super Nintendo. You can see that they all do look pretty similar, but this is squat down a bit. The reason I wanted to show this off to you guys is you can see that they put this weird overlay for Super Famicom above the game to kind of make it look normal. But if I go into the menu and turn this screen overlay off, that's what's really going on here. Not only is it shorter that way, but because that happens, they also have to make the screen smaller this way as well. Now, I'll just pick the Miyoo Flip up so I can compare these. You can see that the Flip just gives you a lot more room on your screen to see the game, and the game on the left is squat down pretty tiny. Even if I put the 34XX SP on full screen, you're still getting like a wide stretched out version of the game, and everything's just smaller, so it's just kind of a weird design. So let's just try Game Boy Advance to show you what this is optimized for and see if it's any better than these. Alright guys, we're on Game Boy Advance. What do you notice? Probably not much, right? I'll show you the subtle difference. On these two devices with the extra screen space on the bottom, they just have a Game Boy Advance overlay, which looks really nice. Because the 34XX SP is made for Game Boy Advance, it doesn't have extra screen room, so there's no overlay down here that says that. And the game will fit perfectly right in the screen. And the Miyoo Flip is just like these two, it just doesn't have the overlay here on the bottom that says Game Boy Advance SP. If you did want to add this overlay here on the bottom, you could customize that. But I mean, come on, is it worth dedicating a screen just so that Game Boy Advance games fit perfectly within the screen? Look at these two, and look at this one. There's really not that much of a difference. They all look good. And these three screens will fit a lot more systems. And there is a little overlay that you can put here, which looks really nice. I just think this is just a massive failure, and this is what they should have went with for sure. So when it comes to these two smaller handhelds, even though this one's a lot higher quality, I just prefer the play on this one, and that's the whole point. The only thing about the Miyoo Flip is that it has a low build quality, so your hinge might break on you over time, and it is very loud. And some people don't like that it feels kind of cheap, but I do like the way it feels. I like that it has a nice texture and stuff like that. And these are lighter weight, which makes them better for travel. And they do have all the extra features like HDMI out. They have Wi-Fi, Bluetooth, and headphone jacks on the bottom. But yeah, the features on these are basically the exact same. But there are some subtle differences. For example, there's a reset button and a power button on this side, whereas on the Miyoo Flip, there's just the power button. They both have SD card slots on both sides, and the volume button's in the same spot. The bumper buttons are a little bit different. These have more travel to them. The Miyoos don't travel as much. And the Miyoo has the charge port on the bottom with the OTG port on the back next to the HDMI out. And the 34XX SP has the headphone jack on the bottom, but a shared OTG port and charge port next to the HDMI out. Some disadvantages about these two though is that their stock OS systems are not great, so again you're going to have to spend a bit more money for a new SD card, put custom firmware on this yourself, or buy custom firmware on a different SD card. And the price of these are also a bit higher. You're going to pay somewhere around $60 to $90, which is more expensive than the other two. But yeah, if you like this bigger screen like I do, just keep in mind you're going to be paying a higher price for a handheld that has very low quality. So the Miyoo Flip is more like a high risk, high reward, because both of mine have been working solid since I first got them and they were first released. I haven't had any issue whatsoever. I've made so many videos of these and I open and close them all the time. And yeah, mine just work by pure fluke, I think. I just can't guarantee you that your hinge is going to hold up like mine has. I just can't. There's real risk of the Miyoo Flip breaking if you buy one. The only thing about the Miyoo Flip is that it does have limited custom firmware options right now. There's really not a whole lot out for it, and there's not many developers really pushing to put custom firmware on this. So just keep in mind that you are kind of limited right now. But Surwish OS has been updated and it's really good. And there's other custom firmwares like MIUI, Spruce OS, and stuff like that that are out. And they do have a bunch of features, especially Surwish OS. So at the moment, it does have solid custom firmware options. It just won't have other custom firmwares that you might like newly completely finished for the Miyoo Flip yet. Here's a summary of the smaller handhelds so you can see some of their advantages and disadvantages. And here's a summary of all the handhelds with some of their advantages and disadvantages, just so you guys can see it a bit easier. So with all that said, which one am I going to choose? Well, when I was growing up, I played everything from Atari 2600 to the Nintendo Sega Wars. I owned a Sega Game Gear, Game Boy Color, N64, and Dreamcast. And I still love to play all those games to this day. So the handheld that can offer me the best experience to play all those games on my trip is the Miyoo Flip. The screen is a great size, it has the joysticks that I will be using, and it's just fun to use. The gameplay is solid. The only thing I'm really at risk here is my hinge breaking while I'm on vacation. But it's been like 6 months of me using this now, so if that don't happen, then I have a perfect little handheld to bring with me and I can play whatever I want. So that's a very realistic and logical choice for me. But again, your preferences will be completely different than mine, so let me know which one you choose. Hopefully you found this video helpful. Like and subscribe, and I'll see you in the next one.